Alright, what's up guys? Jackson Ape here today, and today we're going to talk about how to periodize your nutrition. A lot of people know how to periodize their training, whether they set their program up in like a block, a wave-like loading, or linear type progression. There's various ways that you can periodize your training to get stronger over time, but a lot of people are unaware of how to actually periodize their nutrition. Now, bodybuilders have this down. Like when we go through this, we'll kind of explain like this is how bodybuilders kind of go through their year. And while not everyone is a bodybuilder, if you're looking to improve your physique, if you're looking to lose weight, build a little bit of muscle, you have to split your nutrition up into phases. You cannot just constantly stay in a calorie deficit or a calorie surplus. And even then, when you think you're in a deficit, I have talked about this before, but not a lot of people are aware of it. When you enter a calorie deficit, eventually your body is going to adapt to that new calorie intake that you are going through, and it is going to adapt, and that will be your new normal. That'll be your maintenance calories. So you will no longer be able to lose weight while consuming that amount of calories. You will have to then lower your calorie count again in order to lose weight. So a lot of people will typically think they're in a deficit long term. Well, you know, I've been in a deficit for 16 to 20 weeks and I just can't seem to lose weight. Well, in reality, they never changed. You know, they got into a deficit, but then they never lowered their calories again after that point, and so they just thought the first deficit that they entered was going to be the finale and get them to where they wanted to go, instead of actually continuing to lower their calories. Now, this is where people get stuck, is because they stay in, you know, these deficits or surplus for extended periods of time, you know, almost throughout the entire year, and then they're just spinning their wheels wondering why they're not getting to where they actually want to go. So we are going to dive into how to periodize your nutrition, kind of laid out for you and explaining why this is highly beneficial for your physique, your health, and your mindset along the way, because it's giving you different breaks and splitting things up throughout the year, so you're not just constantly worried about losing weight or burning fat per se. So here we are. We have 4 different blocks that we're going to go through. The first block is going to be our fat loss phase. Now, some people will need to start in the third block, or the muscle building phase, just because of where they're at, which we will get into. So we're going to have our first block, which is our fat loss phase, which we're going to stay in between 12 and 18 weeks. 18 weeks is kind of pushing the high end of a fat loss phase, but if you're a little bit more experienced with the diet and nutrition side of things and your training, you can kind of push your fat loss phase, you know, that on that higher end. Especially if you're taking a very slow, methodical approach to it. That 18 weeks is going to be a real sweet spot for lifters like myself who have been doing this for quite some time. Now, if you haven't entered a fat loss phase ever, it's going to be smart to maybe stick between 12, 14, maybe 16 weeks before we enter our maintenance phase. Now, the maintenance phase is extremely important because once we get our body weight down, once we've trimmed down some fat, built a little bit of muscle in the process, we want to maintain kind of where that calorie point is at. So if we go to our graph, our starting point, for example, is going to be about 2,000 calories. So let's say you eat usually about 2,500 calories, and that's where you're able to maintain your weight. We're going to subtract 500 from that. So we're going to start at 2,000 calories. Now we're going to make a few adjustments along the way. We're going to hit a low point, hopefully, you know, within this 12 to 18 week window. And then at some point we need to raise our calories up just a little bit, because we do not need to stay in that steep of a deficit for too long, especially if we are pushing the fat loss phase extremely hard. Now, we bring up our calories just a little bit, and this is that maintenance phase that I was talking about. We don't want to jump from here all the way up to here, or even halfway up here, right? That's a lot of extra calories that our body's not used to consuming. And so at first, while it may be great to feel full and fueled all of a sudden because you're, you know, in a deficit, this is actually going to tack on a lot more body fat in the long run, because you're consuming so many excess calories from where your new normal is. So we need to stay in this maintenance phase so our body can adapt and can get accustomed to this new calorie intake. So as soon as we are in our maintenance phase, we kind of go through that for about 3 or 4 weeks, just with a slight calorie bump, maintaining that calorie count. We're going to increase our calories, about 500 calories, to enter our muscle building phase. Now, this will be another phase that lasts between 12 and 18 weeks. I really like pushing the higher end of this, especially when you take a slow, methodical approach to this. Your muscle building phase should not just be, I'm going to eat all the food that I can, I'm going to see food and I'm going to eat it. That is the polar opposite of what we want here. We want a slow and methodical approach. Obviously, we're going to need a good calorie bump initially just to get us into that surplus and to tell our bodies like, hey, we're going to start consuming more calories. We want to use this to build muscle. And then we're going to have a few adjustments along the way until we're really at a peak caloric intake for ourselves. We're really pushing some food volume compared to what we're used to. We're actively building muscle, like I said, slowly adding the calories, progressing our training, taking our time in this process because we want to minimize the amount of fat that we're going to put on as well. Anytime you enter a calorie surplus, you are putting on body weight over time when you stay in that surplus for extended periods of time. That doesn't automatically mean you're building muscle or putting on muscle throughout that whole process. You are also putting on water weight and you are also, storing fat within the body because you are consuming more calories than what your maintenance is. So we want to take the slow and methodical approach with a few bumps and calories along the way to minimize that fat loss or to minimize the fat gain throughout this process. And now once we reach kind of the peak of our, like I said, caloric intake, we're going to drop calories just a little bit. We don't want to consume, the high end, and we definitely don't want to drop down to, where we were 6 weeks ago. We just want to drop the calories down enough to give our digestion a break, to kind of take some ease off the amount of food that we may be consuming. And then we're going to hold that for about another 3 to 4 weeks. So our body is going to then get used to this new amount of calories. It is going to be our new normal. And then this is where the cycle repeats and why we periodize our nutrition throughout the year, because now not only do we have a new calorie starting point entering the fat loss phase when we circle back, this calorie starting point is going to be higher than this calorie starting point. Whether that's by 250 calories, 300 calories, 500 calories, that's more calories that you are getting to eat in your fat loss phase than when you began. So imagine in this part of your process, you're able to consume more calories in 2000 and still lose weight in the process. You don't, until you're deep, in your fat loss phase, you don't really realize how much 300 extra calories, how far that can really go, especially when you're hungry. 250 to 500 extra calories per day can go a very, very long way for someone who's in a fat loss diet. So now your new calorie starting point is much higher than this calorie starting point, and the cycle repeats itself. So then again, when you wrap back around one more time, your then new calorie starting point, so let's say this is now 2,300 for round numbers, you're going to go through this whole phase again. This will then be 2,600 calories that you're going to be eating and losing fat, losing fat and losing weight on. That's a big difference in eating 2,000 calories because you only have so much room to go with 2,000 calories. I can only take away so many calories on your plan before we run out of room and you're not eating food which is not conducive to your health, your hormones, or anything of those measures. So now what we do want to talk about is some people's starting point is going to be this block 3, that muscle building phase. A lot of people get down to here, which is their starting point, and they're not consuming nearly enough calories to have their body functions going proper, to build muscle, to burn fat. Say this is like 1,200 calories and people are wondering why they can't lose weight. Well, you're not really eating enough for your body to really fuel itself properly, especially if you're weight training, especially if you're active or if you're a busy individual. You need to be consuming food. It's very important for our health and our functions on a day-to-day basis. And so when your calorie starting point is this low, we can't go much further to enter a fat loss phase if you're not already losing weight. If you're eating 1,500 calories a day and you're not losing weight, there is absolutely no way I or any good coach would ever have you start your fat loss phase on 1,000 calories. That is just ridiculous and is uncalled for, and it is putting you, the person going through the diet at an extreme risk for a lot of issues down the line. So if this is your starting point, then we need to enter our muscle building phase. We need to build up the amount of food that we're eating. We need to build up our metabolism a little bit and our digestion so we can handle a bit more food volume. Now, if this is your starting point, maybe we only enter the muscle building phase for about 12 weeks. A slow, methodical approach with an increase in calories. And then we're going to set ourselves up to be in a maintenance for about, I would say, probably 3 to 4 weeks. Again, just to really ingrain, I would probably push that for 4 weeks, just to really ingrain the new calorie count that we're consuming so your body can go, okay, I like this, this is good, we can work with this. Then when you circle back, you can enter your fat loss phase. But if your calories are too low to start, you're not going to be able to enter a fat loss phase. So this is how bodybuilders do their jam, right? They have a show, they do a little bit of maintenance for a little bit, they run it back to a muscle building phase. They're trying to obviously put on more muscle tissue, trying to bring up weaknesses, improve their physiques, and then they're going to enter a maintenance phase where they have built a good amount of muscle tissue, they've added muscle to their frame, they brought up some of their weak points, and they're maintaining that before they then enter their fat loss phase that gets them to their show, right? So then on show day, this would be, the bottom, the end of their fat loss phase, and then they would go into a maintenance and then repeat that process year after year after year, getting ready for their competitions. So while you may not be a bodybuilder, it is still a very, very good idea for you to periodize your nutrition. Even if you're just a mom or dad that's just, working out in the basement 3 to 4 days a week, you got a busy job, you got a busy household, who knows what you have going on, you still need to periodize your nutrition at some point. You need to enter a muscle building phase at some point. You cannot just stay in the calorie deficit. A lot of people hear the muscle building phase and they're like, well, I don't want to get too big and bulky. Well, at some point you do need to build your metabolism up because you cannot just keep dropping the calories. You need to introduce food to your body so that way you can actually build the muscle tissue via the resistance training that you're performing amongst your active lifestyle as well. If you never enter a muscle building phase, the fat loss phase is never going to work either. You cannot just stay in the fat loss phase long term, but then equally so, these maintenance phases are just as important because these help ingrain our new normals. Even if we're in a fat loss phase, we want to get used to the new calories. We don't just want to bring them up right away. And then after our muscle building phase, we don't just want to tank calories right away because this is going to eat at the muscle tissue and kind of wither away at the gains that we just worked so hard to make. So these maintenance phases are equally important as well. And all of this, when put together, can really produce, a good looking physique that you can be proud of after just a couple of years. And even then, on the short end of things here, this is only a 30-week process. If there's 52 weeks in a year, you can go through this process almost twice, in a calendar year, and really change your physique and put you in a better position to, perform better, feel better, and just live better overall. So I hope this kind of paints a picture for some of you guys that may feel stuck, just in your fat loss phase and wondering why you can't lose weight. But for those of you that are trying to just constantly build muscle, you may need a little bit of a maintenance phase with a little bit of fat loss phase followed by it. You don't need to be spinning your wheels all the time. We can continue to make progress year round by periodizing our nutrition. We can improve our physique, our health, our mindset, and our performance as well on top of that. If you guys are looking for any additional resources, scroll through the Instagram. I got a lot of nutritional information on there. If you guys are looking for more detailed help, I have an ebook on my website that talks about how to set up your diet, to begin with, to get into that fat loss phase, but also as well as how to get into that muscle building phase as well. And then if you guys want to take that a step further, I do offer nutritional coaching, and I can help you guys get on the right track and get on the path with the nutrition plan set up and catered for you. So if you guys have any questions, shoot them down below. If you got anything from this video, please share it with your friends and family, and I appreciate all your guys' support.